Welcome to the Narcissist Slayers podcast. We are your co-hosts, Hope Jay
and Lynn Catalano.
Tune in every month as we teach you how to slay the emotional vampire in your life.
Hope Jay is an attorney and founder of the Center for Hope Western New York, a nonprofit organization providing low and no-cost resources to victims of narcissistic abuse. Visit our website at centerforhopewny.org for more information.
And Lynn Catalano is an attorney and a narcissistic abuse recovery coach. She's the author of Wrecking Ball Relationships. Find out more about Lynn at lynncatalano.com. We are both survivors of narcissistic abuse, and we bring our personal experiences and professional expertise to help you on your path to healing.
Please support us by hitting that subscribe button. We are on YouTube and Spotify at the Narcissist Slayers Podcast.
And follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at the Narcissist Slayers Podcast. Send us your questions to narcslayers@centerforhopewny.org.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Together, we will help you slay the narcissist in your life and reclaim your power.
Today, we have a very interesting topic, one that we have not yet covered. So I'm excited to be bringing some new and different information to our listeners.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So today's topic is when your sibling is a narcissist. We've talked a lot about romantic partners on this podcast. We've talked about parents, but we have never talked about, we've talked about bosses, but we've never talked about siblings.
Yeah. And I know this is going to really impress you, Hope, because you love Dr. Ramani, and she is our absolute...
Dr. Ramani.
Dr. Ramani says that your sibling is your shared historian. That your sibling is the one, you have the same home, the same parents, and you grew up at that same time.
Yes.
And so it's a devastation when that person turns out to suffer from narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah, because I think that if you grow up in a toxic household and one of your parents may be a narcissist or have narcissistic traits, you depend on your sibling as like a lifeline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then to kind of grow up to realize that person has taken on those same toxic traits as the parent. And I know you're going to talk about how that might happen or how that actually, does happen in these kinds of family dynamics.
Yeah.
But I know, Lynn, you've done a lot of blogs on this. I think you said there was a chapter in your book devoted specifically to this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to defer to you today as the person who may be more knowledgeable about this particular issue.
I think you know more than you think. I'm sure once we start, you will recognize that. We're both definitely experts on narcissists. So I think that this is so difficult because as kids, you're growing up in the same place. And then as adults, you want to share that with your sibling.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Your relationship success, your career success, your children. Like there's so much that you want your sibling to be a part of and to have that relationship be positive.
Yeah, especially if you are estranged from a parent. I mean, who, like you had said, your sibling is the one who kind of travels with you through your whole life journey.
Yeah.
And to have to reckon with that, you might have to go no contact or put a lot of space between you and that person. That has to be really devastating and painful. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is something most people don't talk about.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I think it's easy to brush over because romantic relationships are certainly, and parental relationships, I think those are the most paramount.
Right.
When we look at any kind of relationship dichotomy, relationship chart, right?
Right.
But with siblings, now I'm going to ask you this question because you have a very healthy relationship with your siblings. When you have success or failure, are they some of the first people you call?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of why, I'm looking at this through the lens of a person who is I haven't mentioned this on the podcast before, but we are all three of us estranged from our mother, and our father is deceased. So we rely really heavily on each other. And, I think because we did all grow up in the same kind of toxic family dynamic, that I don't think anyone else can understand the same way that your siblings do.
Wow.
So that,
Your shared
like
historian.
I'm almost, like, it makes me really sad to think, like, if one of my siblings had taken on the more toxic traits of, like, my mother, and I would have to protect myself from her.
Wow.
That would be such a huge loss in my life.
Well, not only that, I think that when you have a healthy relationship with your siblings, it's the kind of thing that you count on and that you don't think about all the time because you know you can count on it.
Right.
As
That is true. Yeah.
opposed to when it's a negative, and then it's like this constant hurt. And then when your child has a milestone and you want your sibling, like I know you have several milestones
Yes.
happening right now.
Right.
So your child has a milestone and you want your siblings
for
to be
sure.
part of it. And they are.
Yes.
Well, I have a client, Jake, who has the opposite of that.
Mm.
And his mother is a covert narcissist. And so it was kind of like not the same as what I grew up with, you
Right.
know. And he's the oldest, and he has 2 younger brothers, and they each suffer from personality disorders in some way, shape, or form. And it has affected their relationship and the dynamic with Jake's children.
Yes.
And, I have to share a story. So Jake's first youngest brother, so his one that's only 2 years younger than him, came to visit Jake when he was married and in his home with his 2 daughters. And his youngest daughter was young at the time, like still, I don't know, a toddler. And the brother came with his wife and 2 children. And Jake and his family pulled out all the stops. They took them to see the falls. They took them to see Fort Niagara. They took them everywhere that there was touristy. They took them out to dinner. They hosted them at country club and pool and playing golf and on and on and on and on. Probably like day 4, the brother just packed up everything and left without saying a word to Jake or Jake's wife.
Mm.
He just left. Didn't speak to Jake for 4 or 5 years. Actually got divorced from that wife. That wife sent Jake an apology, explaining that she couldn't say anything at the time.
Yeah.
That brother suffers from narcissistic personality disorder.
It's really interesting to me because, of course, when you've grown up with a parent like this, if you see a sibling that reminds you of that parent or who is exhibiting the same kind of, abusive behaviors as that parent, I think it's going to be incredibly triggering for you as being a survivor of abuse, number one.
Yeah.
But number 2, I think what the most interesting part of this, and I also think it also goes to when you think about why we choose romantic partners and the sort of unconscious reasoning for that is, a rational, reasonable person might say to themselves, if you grew up with this type of abuse, isn't it the last thing that you would do? That would be to choose somebody that would recreate this for you in your life with a romantic partner.
Except hope I defer to 2 episodes ago when we talked about the comfort in the chaos.
But
right?
yes, right. So we've already gone through that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to parents and children, and
Yeah.
this is my point, because I know in my work, I'm representing parents, and they have a lot of worries about their children and how their children are going to survive this, how they're going to survive.
Yeah.
What by this, I mean, how they're going to survive growing up with a parent who has a personality disorder, and what are the long-term effects going to be to the child. And here's where I say, this is where this all comes together, okay? Because what I believe is that when you grow up in a household like this, you either become the codependent who is sort of wired to take care of the abusive personality, or the we'll call it the personality disordered person, or you somehow identify with the abuser and then become that person in your adult life. So I have kind of seen it go both ways. I have seen the children become adults who have grown up in that family dynamic, and they emulate. I'm not trying to be sexist here, please forgive me, but it's generally the mother who's the codependent taking care of the father. So they become much like their mother. But a lot of times you see, and I'm seeing this right now, unfortunately, particularly in one specific case that I have, where the boy, the eldest son, is becoming his father.
Oh my God.
And he's beginning to treat his mother in the same way. And, because he's learned from watching the abuser.
Children model their behavior.
Right. So I don't think it's as uncommon as we might think that if you grow up in an abusive household, that you may, instead of rejecting those characteristics, that unconsciously you become like that person.
Well,
let me ask you this, because I know we have a lot of questions to get through. So no, I just want to make sure that we have time. So I want to ask you, what are the signs of a narcissistic or toxic sibling?
So I think that the intense competition, the competitiveness, and I know this is a further question, but I'm going to tell you, it comes from the home environment, and it comes from the way your parents parent you and your siblings, right? And so I can ask you this question because you have such a healthy relationship with your siblings. Obviously, that did not happen in your house.
Well, so I think that we followed the more, I don't know what to call it, traditional, but we're all three girls. Okay. So I think we became the codependent. We all three have codependent traits. My sisters have gotten involved with people who exhibit either addiction or narcissistic traits themselves, just like I have.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things where the comfort thing.
Yep.
Because we grew up in the chaos and that dynamic. But there's none of us, fortunately, became the abuser, became the more or less the narcissist, right?
Yeah.
So but I think what you're saying, like if you're gonna try to identify the narcissist, if you're in a sibling constellation, right, and what is it that you're going to be feeling very likely about your sibling if they have narcissistic or toxic traits?
I mean, and this is where you're going to feel, the manipulations and some passive aggressiveness, perhaps, but also this is where you start to recognize the differences between you and your sibling. So, and again, this goes to overt versus covert narcissists, but I'm going to tell you, the people that I have coached that had toxic siblings often had siblings who only spoke about themselves, never asked you a question, which is one of my red flags of a narcissist, right? Because they stay in the shallow end of the relationship. They're never going to ask you an open-ended question. They're going to ask you chocolate or vanilla. That's it. But I think that they're also talking about their own successes all the time. They need to be validated and reassured all the time. Jake's brother, the one that left his house, also likes to talk about things that are very random. Like, no one's talking about cars or possessions. People are talking about the weather or the food. I mean, the conversation is not about this. And he'll say, I'm going to test drive a Mercedes next week.
Right.
And this is clearly out of his price range for a vehicle. And no one asked. But he is trying to make sure that everyone at the table knows where he's coming from.
Right.
So it's a very strange relationship. They create the strange dynamic amongst you. And it's as if, they're so jealous and they're so competitive with you, and they're in a competition that you're not in.
Right. So Lynn, do you think that in the family constellation, and I'm talking about the biological family, that there is some kind of like predilection or influence that the abusive parent can exert in as far as like the sibling relationships, that can kind of create a narcissist in the sibling order. So for example, like not in every sibling relationship or sibling families with siblings, but there's often a scapegoat and there's often a golden child. And when you're being raised by a narcissist, what are narcissists infamous for? They're infamous for splitting, right? They're infamous for creating
She's answering her own questions.
Well, I'm just saying these competitive kinds of environments between siblings. And how does that impact the sibling relationship?
Well, you're absolutely nailing it, right? So not only do you have the scapegoat and the golden child, I've also identified the eternal child, which is often the youngest. Okay.
Yeah.
So in Jake's family, Jake is the scapegoat. Nothing Jake does is ever right, is ever praised. Jake just, and here's the great thing about Jake, he doesn't care. He lets it roll right off of him. He is so emotionally mature that he is able to just say, I don't care. I don't need it from them. I'm fine. Now, his mother does not give him any praise, no recognition. She's never said, wow, like Jake is the only one with a doctorate degree in his family. He's the only one with a consistent marriage for more than 25 years. He's the only one who travels the world. He owns multiple property investments. Like, these are things that a parent should say, wow.
Right.
Kids are both in college. Everybody's very stable, consistent. No, mother gives 0, okay? But then the brother who suffers from NPD, well, he is the golden child. Nothing he can do is wrong.
Right.
Even though, and are you ready for this? Jake's mother got into some financial trouble a few years ago. And instead of calling her son, who's an attorney, she goes to the golden child and he takes her house and just assumes the mortgage payments. She had 3 other children.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting concept. So he basically like fleeced the mother for the house. So how does this not leave everyone else with a bad taste in their mouth when the golden child can do no wrong? And he is so insecure that like everyone's always out to get him, right? No one tells him enough how great he is. So he has all these issues on his own. He's caused many narcissistic rage storms at family events. This is what they do. And then the youngest brother, he's the eternal child. So he's never had to be an adult. He's like 48 years old and he just got married, and like every decision he makes is very like juvenile and disrespectful to everybody else because he doesn't have to be. So I think that when you set up those dynamics in the family constellation, you're bound, like as a covert narcissist, I think this mother like sets them all up and then sits back with her popcorn to watch the dynamics.
Absolutely. I mean that.
Right?
Well, right. I mean, that's the thing. It's like if you grow up in a family where this type of behavior is the norm, right? And because narcissists don't like have reciprocal relationships with anybody, not even their children.
Right.
So it's not like if you have a narcissistic parent, they're not really interested in you as a person. They don't care about your needs. You're important to them only in as so much as that you can lift them up, or, make them feel good about themselves, or somehow give them something that they can brag about to their colleagues or their friends.
What can you do for me?
What can you do for me?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so, but the most damaging thing, and you didn't grow up with siblings, so you didn't have this experience. But the most damaging thing, had you would have, I guarantee, damaging thing that a narcissistic parent does to their children is what you just described, is that they split the children.
Yep.
They create this golden child who can do no wrong, who then likely as an adult becomes the narcissist, right?
Yep.
The other thing that they do is they turn their kid's childhood into a competition. So that the children are competing not just for the narcissist's love, but between one another for the narcissist's love.
Yeah.
So it's not a healthy family situation, because everyone's climbing over the other person. And they're not, instead of encouraging support and
none of it.
and the nice relationships that siblings have in families that are not characterized by this dynamic. You're almost set up for failure as a sibling who's being raised in a relationship like this. And you have to really overcome a lot as an adult to heal the relationships with your siblings if the narcissistic parent has been able to do this kind of damage.
Okay, but guess what? Most of the time, I'm going to generalize, the non-narcissistic sibling who wants to repair the relationship because they genuinely want a relationship with their brother, sister, whomever, is often deterred by the narcissist saying, there's nothing wrong with me.
Well, right. So you're in the exact same situation as you would be with the parent or the romantic partner. So Lynn, that's what kind of brings me to like what can you do when you have a toxic sibling, as far as grieve the relationship if it can't be repaired? How do you move forward? What about all the things that you said in the beginning about not
wanting
being
your children?
All of that. Yeah.
Well, and of course, I think that it's somehow we're wired to want our children to know our siblings and to be a part of that greater picture, right? The greater family picture. And when you face a situation where your siblings are toxic, it becomes impossible. At some point, I think that you have to say, this is not healthy for me or my children or my spouse. And you have your own family. I think that that's what Jake looks at it like. He has a nice nucleus of a family, and it's a shame that they can't be part of this greater picture, but those people don't want to be. They don't want that. So you're asking me, what can you do?
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, as an only child, I feel like I was the scapegoat and the golden child, depending on my narcissistic father's mood, right? Because when it served him, I was the golden child because it looked good on him. When it didn't serve him, I was the scapegoat child, and I could go push salt, so it depended on the day. As far as what you can do, I think a lot of times geography helps take care of some of this, because I think that with being separated by geography, you have to work at having a relationship. You have to call each other and talk to each other and, participate in each other's lives and be willing to visit and, be part of your kids' lives. And it's reciprocal. It's mutual. And so if you don't have that, I think that you tend to move on. Many times our chosen friends are closer to our families and our children than our actual family.
Right.
And that's okay too. But I think for your own peace, number one, I always tell people to set boundaries. If you have a situation where your parent is ill or your parent is in need of something and you must see or speak with your siblings, set boundaries. You're available to speak between 1 and 2. You have to be very rigid in that, because otherwise they take control and run right over you.
Right.
So I do think that's number one. I think it's really important to prioritize what's important to you and make sure that you're able to process everything that's happening. And so I don't ever want anyone to have regrets. So I want you to do what you feel you need to do is necessary. And whether that's to go and be in the hospital, nursing home, be by your parents' side, whatever, that's fine. But if the sibling is causing you distress, maybe you can agree to take shifts or do something, that mutually helps you. Make sure that you keep thinking about your peace and protecting that.
Right.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, that's all really good advice. And also, as I'm sitting here thinking about this and, the whole family dynamic, I think that it is, that there's a range, just like there is,
Oh, definitely.
with people who decide I'm gonna go no contact with a parent, or I'm going to limit my contact with a parent. I think it really depends on how dangerous of a person you determine this person to be. So if, because I've heard horrific stories, Lynn, from clients
Wow.
about, particularly when a parent dies, when you have a narcissistic sibling who, I've heard horrible, horrible stories where they're fighting over possessions, and the narcissistic sibling just somehow, like you mentioned earlier, but if a parent is deteriorating and they come in and they get them to sign a power of attorney,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden
Yep.
you're completely cut out,
Yep.
and you have no relationship with
Right.
with the mother. And I've heard of this one story where they actually moved the mother, like in the middle of the night,
Oh my God.
to another state where the caretaker had previously been the sister. And she had cared for her mother for all these years, and the narcissistic sibling, her brother, swoops in.
Wow.
And just destroys the entire family because he's able to convince somebody who is, has dementia to sign over a power of attorney.
Control, power and control.
Power and control.
We're right back
So
there.
right. So but like people who are listening might be thinking, these kinds of situations happen.
Yeah.
And these kinds of siblings are dangerous.
Yeah.
They're just as dangerous as, all of the other narcissists that we've talked about in the context of, romantic partners or bosses or parents or whatever. So
absolutely.
So, if it gets to a level like that and you have to involve courts or the police or, please, by all means, I think that the stigma exists. And it still exists when it comes to family.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this a lot. You had set a boundary with your narcissistic father, and in the last years of his life had no contact with him and suffered as a result of that.
Right.
A stigma for making that decision.
Correct.
I have also made a similar decision with, like I said earlier, with respect to my mother and my siblings, and the three of us are aligned on that. But I think that that's sort of this last stigma that's left. It's like, when you decide to stop talking or to cut a relative out of your life, whether it be a parent or a sibling, I think it's harder to talk about it. And because you fear people's reactions to that. Well, why would you do that? That's your brother. That's your sister. That's your mother. That's your father. Right.
I get that all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, and we've definitely said this before, but because we're talking about family again, I just want to say it again. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay if that's what you feel like you have to do to protect your peace. Yeah. And not only your peace, but your children, maybe your spouse or your partner.
Right.
Because these people can be vindictive. Yeah. They can be awful.
Destructive.
Very destructive.
Yeah.
So,
But I got to say, a lot of times, many times you don't have to make that decision to go no contact. The narcissistic sibling will automatically cut you off.
They do it as well.
Yeah.
And so good old silent treatment.
That's great because you're going to move on with your life. You're going to value the people in it. I do believe that the kryptonite to this awful narcissistic abuse is gratitude. And so I want you to be grateful for the people that are in your life and to recognize those people. That is absolutely what I say on a regular basis.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
So on that note, I think we will say goodbye for today, and we will see you next time on the Narcissist Layers.